Do you like almonds? Do you like apples? Do you own any land? If you answered yes to any of those questions, then Patty Sundberg has another one for you. Are you willing to help her save her industry? Hi, I'm Dave Price. Patty and her husband Lance own Sunshine Apiary in Columbus, Montana. But Patty is not just thinking about the family honeybee business. After all, she did serve as the president of the American Beekeeping Federation, so she followed very closely when a report came out and it showed that commercial beekeepers lost 62% of their colonies in about a year's time. 62%. That was an SOS moment for the industry, and that is why Patty hopes to convince landowners to think about doing things differently. The American Farmland Owner podcast is brought to you by MetLife Investment Management's Agricultural Finance Group. Positioned to help you grow your business across generations, the MetLife Investment Management Agricultural Finance Group provides long-term competitive farm and ranch real estate financing designed for the needs of today's agricultural operations. Whether you're expanding acreage, strengthening your balance sheet, refinancing existing debt, or investing in long-term productivity, MetLife Investment Management delivers financing solutions built for today's agricultural businesses. Backed by more than 100 years of agricultural lending experience, we offer flexible loan structures and the capacity to support large-scale transactions. From row crops and vineyards to cattle ranches and dairies, our agricultural lending professionals understand the business of agriculture. Learn more at metlife.com/ag. Patty, welcome. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
I'm great this morning. Thank you for inviting me.
All right, tell us about life in Montana. What are you up to?
Life in Montana today is we are extracting, we are removing honey from our bees, and we have a fire just probably a mile away from some beehives that decided to flare up in the middle of a wind farm last night. So that's what's happening this morning here.
You and your hubby are first generation beekeepers. What got you into it?
Started with Lance's passion. He started it as a 4-H FFA project and was able to work for a commercial beekeeper, got into his bloodstream and his love, and I wanted to own my own business. And once we got started on our own and married, we just seemed like it made a good fit, so we jumped in.
A lot of times here on the podcast, we like to talk to producers in whatever industry they're in to talk about what's going on, why you do it, and what we as a country have to do to better support our domestic producers. If you look at what the industry has been through the last couple of years with the bee population and how that's gone down and all the factors that led to that, what's that been like? How has that impacted your own business, and where are things headed, do you think?
Well, things are scary right now. The bee industry is not a great stable industry right now. The decline in populations and in bees started really more in 2005 to 2008, but it's caught up and it's become unsustainable with the high losses. You know, if any other form of livestock especially was losing 35 to 62% of their livestock every year, you know, people would be well aware of it because they could see the dead cows out in the field and things like that. Where for honeybees, it's different and unique in that the way the honeybee hive repopulates and tries to grow, we can have a calf, as if you compared it to that, come off more than once a year. So that's how we've been able to try to sustain, but economically, that's not going to be sustainable. We're running half the number of hives in the United States than we used to.
And has that been the case in Montana as well? Have you been exempt from this at all? Or it's hit you hard too?
I don't know of anybody that's exempt. We kind of go through little rotations. You kind of get your hives strong and you happen to be in an area where the moisture is just right and the forage is pretty good, and so you slide through a year or two and then it catches up and hits you. There's multiple factors, in my opinion, that's affecting, all of our issues. Forage for bees is huge, and that has changed just in the 48 years we've been doing it. Farming practices have changed, and so a hay field that across from our bee yard that used to take 3 days, they can get that down in 5 hours. And so that's made a difference in forage, and I don't think a lot of the things that changed were intentional, but have definitely made some huge impacts.
So then what's behind, what will it take to rebuild the population?
Um,
Or is that the
so
$1 million question?
yeah, I mean it's kind of like, how do you fix healthcare?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's just so many issues to it that where all do you start? Forage is huge, and that's things that every individual can help with. It's on
Hmm.
very small parts, but they can still help with it. There's more and more people owning 20-acre pieces of property. They can put an acre into some beneficial pollinator plants, and that's for all pollinators that do pollination. One of the things that people don't realize is how important honeybees are to what's on their food table. Um, I always try to tell them, when I was a kid, I grew up north of Great Falls, Montana, and we had oranges and apples in our grocery store. We didn't have fresh blueberries, strawberries,
Uh-huh.
raspberries, all that all year long, and expect that to be a normal. Now that is expected to be a normal, and without, figuring out how we're going to do that economically throughout the United States, is our food is at concerning issues right now.
So can you talk about that in that example you're talking about? If you've got a 20-acre plot and if you have the ability to set aside an acre, when you're talking about those better pollinating plants, what kind are you talking about there? What could help the bees thrive?
So any kinds of daisies, sunflowers, every state has some flowers that are unique to them that attract them. They can put alfalfa and yellow sweet clover and xanthoin in there if they want, but they don't have to. They can just do blanket flower. They can do any mints, any verbenas, there's just a lot of them, and every USDA resource has those on a website where people can find out what's unique to their area. There's also a group called Bee and Butterfly Habitat. It has a great website and can help people with seeds and where to get it.
You mentioned USDA. USDA has undergone a lot of changes during this administration. And you've done this long enough so you can see administration to administration, party to party, kind of whatever the theme is of that administration. Then sometimes you do a hard right turn or hard left turn, depending on your politics, I suppose. From one to the next. What has this big transition been like for the second Trump administration, specifically for your industry?
Well, one of the biggest problems is the research labs and shutting them down and moving them. That we've taken some significant hits there. The uncertainty of what was going to happen, people aren't going to sit there forever and wait and see if their job is there or not there or what's going on. And some of them aren't able to relocate to North Dakota or Colorado or wherever they might have to relocate to. So we've lost some key researchers to other countries, other occupations. And that's, we know they're gone, but we won't really feel the hits of those even probably for a couple of years because their research is stopped. And now what we were hoping for results is somewhere else.
That
And
is
and how long will it take us to catch that up?
And that's some of the feedback it seems like I've had for the last year and a half or so, the kind of hatchet approach,
Hmm.
rather than more I don't know, kind of a laid out, more thoughtful way to reform everything, even if you're talking about moving staff and shrinking staff and reassigning all those kind of stuff. When you're doing it so the jarring way this was, it really almost created a shock for a lot of people.
Right. And so an interesting thing is last year when we were in Washington, D.C., visiting with different departments and stuff, a lot of the people there had only been under their new supervision or their new position for 2 weeks. So
Hmm.
just reestablishing so much. And um, I'm not going to say there wasn't some need for change. There's always need for change, but do you just chop and start over, or do you kind of analyze and go and try not to disrupt everything?
Now, you had a role, a national role with the organization for a while. Why do that? You and your husband are already running a business, so that's a whole other thing to take on with all the other stuff you're trying to balance. Why did you take on that national role?
Uh, so I've been active in the organization that I'm in, which is American Beekeeping Federation. It's one of the two largest national bee organizations. And I feel like for my industry, I was I've always just been super active. I was chair of the Honey Queen program, which is an educational promotional program that we travel throughout the United States with every year. And I've been involved on the boards and what we do. And I just felt like it was important in the time that I could. My children are grown. We were at a pretty decent stable spot with our business, with our employees. And I mean, we're always shorthanded, but they were supportive. And so somebody always needs to step into that leadership role. And I agreed to do that.
Okay, so you watch things both your own business, what's going on statewide, what's going on nationally. As we talk this week, as we record in mid-August here, we're going back and forth, threats, pullbacks, whatever, with whether the Trump administration is going to levy additional tariffs on Canadian imports. I believe one of the figures was like a 50%. These tariffs are always interesting, right? For a business owner, I don't
Mhm.
understand how anybody makes any kind of plans when it's a threat and a pullback and all this. But big picture, most of our honey's still imported, right? And so you're all trying to expand your business, repopulate, all that kind of stuff. How are you watching these tariffs? Obviously, I don't want to say selfishly, but you would prefer people to buy honey from American producers, right? Because you're an American
Right.
honey producer. So
Right.
how do you pay attention to the to all this tariff stuff?
Well, some of it I was trying to track quite a bit, but to be honest, there was so much talk and hype, and then
Hmm.
it would get cut back, and it's like I don't really have time for that. I have to really manage our business. We're unique in that we sell to a packer in the United States that packs US honey, and they're in Colorado, and so I can focus on that. The price of the honey overall, though, is still affected by all those imports because the United States is only consuming 20%. 20% of what we are consuming in honey is US honey. The other 80% is coming from other countries.
Sure.
And it's coming in um, price levels that are not we can't compete with that standard at all. And so and then the labeling is confusing. And
Hmm.
so I spend a lot of time encouraging people to look at your label, see where your honey's coming from. There's a local beekeeper somewhere close to you. Find them, find out if they pack honey or if they have a friend that does, or and start consuming more US honey, and that way and get that demand up.
But those labels, not just in your industry, but overall, as an American consumer, though, labeling can be confusing, right?
It's very
Because,
confusing.
yeah, because you don't, it's hard to know how much of whatever the heck you're buying
Right.
comes from here and here. And sometimes there's sort of almost a country where parts of a product almost park or get reprocessed or other stuff added to it or whatever the heck it is before it makes it here. Like that's hard to do.
Yeah, and tracking whether it really is from, the country that it says it is, or did it come from another company, stop at that port, and then get relabeled and come in from another country. There's a lot of that going on. And as a beekeeper, it's kind of easy for us to figure out because we can figure out how many beekeepers are in those countries and go, wait a minute, they aren't making that much honey. And just like we aren't making that much honey. So if all of a sudden we started exporting way more honey than we're importing, somebody should get real suspicious.
Hmm.
Um, But and how do we move on with that? The labels. So here's another, we fight nutritional labeling also on honey. A few years ago, the big push was all labels needed to say how much sugar was added to
Hmm.
them. And if it had sugar in it, if you were consuming sugar, then it was considered an added sugar. And the honey industry fought that for a long time. We aren't adding sugar to your diet. We as consumers are adding sugar by eating honey, just like you are when you eat fruit. There's a natural sugar that goes into
Natural
your
sugar.
system.
Yeah.
But the average consumer thought everybody was putting honey or sugar into whatever those products were. And there was multiple products like maple syrup, many products that were affected by that labeling, but we could not convince that it was confusing to the consumer.
Hmm.
And that's very misleading.
Well, it was added sugar, but God added the sugar.
Right.
we,
Yeah.
we didn't add the sugar to that.
Yeah, not, but evidently they don't think. And maybe consumers really don't get it. I don't know, but I think they do. And then we're also told, well, people don't care where their honey comes from. Yeah, I think they do if you give them the opportunity to know. I think they do. Um, so we should let them know. We should have, but then we find out, well, really in the United States, we don't have a true standard of identity. It's not
Hmm.
clear what the definition is. Then there's testing honey, and how can you prove that it's from where it says it is, and if a bee made it or not made it. So that has progressed over the years we've been in business, and the testing is there, but we have to stay up with it and get that standard done.
We talked about tariffs, but there has been an effort, and I assumed you were part of this when you were president, to work with Canadian producers, sort of North America overall.
Yeah,
How did that work out, and where's that headed?
good. We actually formed what's called the North American Bee Strategy,
Hmm.
and with both Canada and the United States, understanding that there's only so much we can influence and change, but being united as beekeepers, having a platform that says, look, we want a standard of identity. We want the testing done. We want it clearly labeled, and we want that across the board. We want our borders, both in Canada and the United States, to be aware of the threats of other pests and parasites that can come into the United States and Canada through our ports. So there was a lot of talk about, varroa mites here. We've had other things come. There's the tropicalaps mite out there, and what can we as the countries as a whole? And so we came up with a whole little policy format that we can. It's called the the North American Bee Strategy, um, and we can present that together united. So Canadian representatives and U.S. representatives put that together.
Can you talk about overall, maybe the financial health? You and your husband have done this a long time, and you mentioned that you're kind of unusual in that you're first generation. A lot of these people are sort of born into it, kind of take over their family operations. The cost of getting into it. So as we look at other industries, there's been the barrier to entry has been so hard for a lot of young folks who maybe want to get into agriculture in whatever level. What is it like in your industry if I'm a 22-year-old whatever and I want to break into it? Is that something that's feasible?
Yeah, the younger generation seems like they're either ready to jump in with both feet or they don't want to work, one or the other. Uh,
A lot of
but
extremes.
yeah, both extremes. And maybe we've always been that way. There's opportunity out there, but it's extremely hard to get started and it's extremely expensive. And then there's the knowledge of knowing it. And we're first generation. We have three sons. We've encouraged all of them to go on to college and they've done that. All of them love the bee business, but they're not in it.
Mm.
Um, they're they're in other states making money a little bit better than you can in Montana. So,
But that's not
but
good, right?
no, it isn't good and it's not sustainable in the big picture. And
Yeah.
and for us, we always were really proud of the fact that we never had to hire anybody but local people.
Hmm.
But 7 years ago, that became unsustainable. We cannot get enough people. Um, to work. So we joined what's called the H-2A program, and we bring
Hmm.
in employees from ours come from Mexico. But it's a timely and it's an expensive process
Sure.
to bring them in also. So it gets right now, I'm 67 years old. I could be retiring, but I'm still working full time.
Hmm.
And to transition that over to my key employees, it's like, how do we do that? How do we make it affordable and make it stay, a local business that supports our community? When we started, we were only going to produce honey in Montana. Because I wasn't going to be migratory. I'd gone to California. I learned how to raise queens and did pollination with my husband. The first year we were married with another beekeeper, and I was like, no, I don't want to raise my kids this way
Uh-huh.
because you're on the road and you have to make a decision.
Yeah.
Are you going to homeschool them? Are you going
Hmm.
to move them from schools back and forth?
Hmm.
It's kind of like if um, farmers understand the custom cutting and all that. We're custom pollinators and going when you hit that road. Well, after our second year of business, we had 7 years of drought in Montana, drought
Phew.
or grasshoppers. So we weren't borrowing just money to get started. We were borrowing money to put milk on the table.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for farm home administration loan availability, because the standard bank doesn't understand ag. It's hard for them unless they're a true ag lending bank.
Hmm.
And then bees are worse than like cattle because they could fly away. Uh,
Yeah.
so they're nervous and they're worried.
Sure.
But through that program, we were able to move forward, but we had to take on pollination. In the last 5 years, our prices haven't gone up. Our pollination fees haven't gone up. Our price honey's actually gone down. This year it's the market is up right now compared to what it was. But that's supply and demand. We have a lot of supply down in the United States from lots of bees, lots of crops because of the drought and
Hmm.
wind and fires and or floods.
Hmm.
So a lot of things affecting it.
Could you talk a little bit more about the workforce? The when do you need, you mentioned that you bring in some foreign workers. What is the time period for that? And maybe just a little bit more background about the local community, population wise, job force, all that kind of stuff, and why that's necessary to bring in outside folks.
So for us, we actually need them year round, but we only have them come in from April through December because we can have them in Montana and it's easier for us to house them and wage them in Montana. I'm currently looking at a dual state application where we would have some and split where they come into California, but California's rules are much stricter about housing. I mean, we live in camper trailers when we're there.
Hmm.
We're kind of the gypsy. We don't have another house down there, which is pretty common with a lot of beekeepers. But I can't house foreign workers all that same way. You have to have certified houses and all that. So whether I'll be able to do that and financially afford it or not, I don't know. My other option is to use temp ag services in that state. The disadvantage to them is they don't know you, they don't know your system, and you're getting a new employee every time.
Hmm.
So it becomes quite challenging. So we get them for here. We have them help us get things established for as soon as the bees come home out of pollination. And we go into our honey production. We help them build all of our equipment, help us run the queens, help us do all the harvesting, help us clean everything up, get it ready to move to California, load bees on this end, and then we have our US workers that go to California to receive them on that end.
And how many folks do you have living in town?
Uh,
Talk about
we
your town a little bit.
we have 1900 as a population of our town.
And has that been stable, going down? What?
We grow about 1%
Okay.
a
So
year
that's
since we've lived here. It's pretty stable, really. Most people want to live out. The county has increased more in the city. We have hills and then a river right here that kind of prevents
the growth.
the boundaries of the city itself.
Okay. So kind of moving forward, because I'm fascinated, your state is like almost, I guess, all others in the sense that we have to find a way to have growth in these smaller communities. And it's like the chicken and the egg here. I mean, we don't have the workforce, but you got to have jobs there for workforce. And you got to have the infrastructure and everything else here. And we're at this kind of flashpoint in the country about how to handle immigration and what to do about it. But like for your operation, you all can't really do it without temporary workers to bring in because you don't have domestic workers. So what's the balance here?
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, Billings, Montana is the largest city in
Hmm.
Montana, and they're 40 miles to the east of us.
Hmm.
And the housing developments and all that, I don't know what all those people are doing. I don't know where they're working. Maybe just jobs of people living off of people, because we don't have a lot of manufacturing. We don't have
Hmm.
and of course, the the ability to work from home has changed a lot. So there's a lot TI or IT people and
Sure.
stuff that can live there and be there and raise their kids there. Although even back in the 80s, my husband worked for a short period of time with a pool company. And one of his clients was a wedding dress designer who worked in New York but lived in Montana because he wanted to raise his kids there. But he just flew out of Billings and went to New York once a week. And, so it's just interesting. But the population is way different. The rural areas, especially, we used to have, a farm around us because we work with 250 different landowners in the state of Montana.
Hmm.
And they used to have a hired man or maybe two, and they lived on their farm with them, and they had 3 to 5 kids, and they were part of the schools. And that area has changed completely. Farm machinery has brought a lot into that, but at the same time, population in the United States is up. So jobs are there, where are the workers? And
Hmm.
and to make big money in Montana is a little unique.
Yeah. So where do you see things headed in your industry?
I think we'll survive. We're survivors. Ag people are survivors. I don't think
Hmm.
it won't be without a battle.
Yeah.
I think we'll work hard to survive. We need to figure out how to get habitat for all pollinators. Everybody enjoys flowers and bushes and trees, and all those things need pollinated. Everybody enjoys our diversification of food. And so, our ag as a whole in the United States kind of geared up to feeding other countries. And that's why we started producing more and more grain and more soybeans and corn and all that. And maybe on the edges of those fields, can we go back and put some pollinator strips in next to them? Is there any reason we can't use our roadsides and put some forage in them? And our public lands, can we be utilizing more of that and not get so worried about anything that does bloom becoming a weed?
We got a
If
lot
you
of
like
work
to
to do.
eat, you want pollinators. One out of every
Sure.
3 bites we consume right now requires pollination.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Patty, thank you so much for the conversation. We appreciate the background and thanks for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Nice meeting you as well. Patty Sundberg on a mission to make sure the bee industry not only rebounds, but thrives. Now, you can find that report that laid out how dire the situation was for the honeybee industry. You can check that out by finding it in our breakout article with Patty, and you can find that in the American Farmland Owner Weekly Newsletter. It's the place where landowners get their news every week for free. Find it now at AmericanFarmlandOwner.com. Thanks for joining us this week for the podcast, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.